pleasant day to our listening and viewing audience. Thank you for tuning in to the Roundtable, a special engagement between the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Honourable Dr. Terrance Drew, and members of the media. Prime Minister, welcome. Also extending a special welcome to our media representatives here with us today. We have from SKNIS, Ms. Shirley Matthew, from ZIZ Broadcasting Corporation, Ms. Carla Berridge, from SKN Newsline, Mr. Glenn Bath, and from SKN Source, Ms. Ebony Brandon. With broadcasting for us, we want to give a special thank you to our broadcasters, ZIZ Broadcasting Corporation, Win FM, CBN Partners, Freedom FM, SKN Newsline, TVC Channel 40, Tel TV, St. Martin, Sugar City FM, Vaughan Radio, and Create TV from our Creative Economy Ministry. Thank you for assisting us with ensuring that the public is able to keep abreast of what's happening within the Federation. At this point, I'll hand over to the Prime Minister, Honourable Dr. Terrance Drew, who will deliver his opening remarks before opening the floor to engage with our media representatives. Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Press Secretary. Let me say good afternoon to all of our citizens, residents who are listening and who have tuned in. I also want to recognize the media houses that are here with us this afternoon. It's always, of course, a very important occurrence when I get the opportunity to sit with the media to discuss matters of national importance, regional importance, and I dare say also international importance. Today, as usual, I will start out with a short opening statement that I will curtail, but just to touch on a number of very critical matters. The first one being the hurricane season. I put out already my statement with respect to that. I see it circulating a bit more since we have the storm, or the hurricane rather, in the region. So on Monday, we held an emergency meeting at the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, with a number of stakeholders to discuss our national collective response to Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency member states recently impacted by Hurricane Beryl. We assessed our state of readiness to ensure that St. Kitts and Nevis is equipped to provide the necessary support to our fellow brothers and sisters here in the Caribbean region, and also to assist ourselves in the case or in the situation where we might be affected. As we know, Hurricane Beryl has caused significant damage, and I just came off an emergency meeting of CARICOM, really to discuss the response of CARICOM as a result of this hurricane passing through the Caribbean. The countries that are affected significantly are St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Grenada, Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Also we had Barbados, Tobago, St. Lucia to some extent. And this has devastated the Grenadines and those islands for both St. Vincent and Grenada, which are Union Island, significantly affected. It is part of the Grenadines of St. Vincent. And then we had Carriacou and Petit Martinique, which are part of Grenada. Hearing the accounts from the Prime Minister of St. Vincent, Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, Honorable, and Honorable Deacon Mitchell of St. Vincent, of Grenada rather, Petit Martinique and Carriacou, one can easily understand the devastation that they suffered. They will give the official report, but based on what we discussed, it does not look good. And this is one of the things that I've been speaking about since coming to office, that we face an existential threat, and that threat is the climate crisis. And at some point, we will be hit hard. This year, we are seeing a record, a Category 5 hurricane in the month of June. This has occurred because the sea level the temperature of the seas are high. The temperature that we see now is the temperature that is normally seen sometime is August, September, but we are seeing that in the very early part of the hurricane season. And that means that we are in for a rough ride in 2024. This is why I keep saying that we need to get to a sustainable island state. If we didn't understand what that means, it means to create a country that is resilient to these type of storms, that we build the infrastructure, we do the necessary things so that we can resist. And that is why I declared that we needed a climate-smart hospital. We need climate-smart homes. It has become almost a cliche, and some people are taking it for a joke. But when we see what has happened in the Grenadines, we know how serious that is. And that is why I am working feverishly to get that hospital up. Because with these storms that I said since I came to office that will be coming through the region, if it's one facility, institution that should remain standing, should be the hospital. I've said that over and over again. When I hear reports that the hospitals in the Grenadines are basically destroyed and people don't know what has happened to the patients there, it's frightening. When you hear 90-something+ % of the houses and buildings are damaged, that the islands are basically inhabitable at this point in time. Only large boats can get there. No communication. It tells us that the climate crisis is real, and this is really an existential threat, meaning it can disrupt our lives so much that we may not be able to live in parts of the country. And I'm sure the Grenadines is going to have a very difficult time to come back. This is why we have to rush to a sustainable island state. Everything has to be built climate smart. We can suffer a major storm in the next month. Jamaica right now is bracing for a Category 3 hurricane, and this is only June. And therefore, I hope that this has really brought home the point about climate change. And this is not a hoax, this is real. When we speak of really climate resilience, this is what we are speaking about. However, there's hope, because I think setting the agenda of the sustainable island state has put us on a path to really get to where we hope to go. It will be a long road. It will require all working together to get there. But as a people, we have to prioritize, we have to plan. We must know that this is going to be extremely expensive. Just to build a brand new hospital that is climate resistant is costing us $60 million. And that's just a hospital. The homes that we are seeking to build, and they will start building out in earnest from this week, I can tell you that. We got a bit slowed down because of the hurricane in the region, where we are starting the next 50. We are rolling out. I spoke to the financiers for the program, and they have assured me that all is in place, and I've seen that all is in place. We need climate-smart homes so that we can resist as much as possible these strong storms, these frequent storms, and all the changes that come with climate change. The whole world was aiming to limit the temperature rise by 2030 to no more than 1.5. It is projected to be at least 2, because human beings, we on this earth, we have responded slowly. If we get to 2, I can assure you that the hurricanes will become stronger and more frequent than what we are seeing this season. That is how serious the matter is. Just to pay for adaptation, meaning just to pay to upgrade our infrastructure to resist these storms, that cost is in the region of billions of dollars. Billions with a B, just to adapt. That has nothing to do with continued development. But the Sustainable Island State model has in it the idea of mitigation, adaptation, and, of course, progress or development. And that is why I think putting that together was excellent foresight and visionary. And to first move on the hospital and the homes were, of course, critical, important decisions, which I think we all understand now. But I think there will be questions to deal more with the climate issue and how we are going to pay for it as a country to deal with this scourge. Because when we hear what comes out of the Grenadines, it will bring tears to our eyes. I can say that for sure. Now, I also want to update the country on my state visit to Taiwan. Each time I make any significant travel, I update the country. I think as the Prime Minister, I am accountable to you, the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. I'm accountable to you. And so I traveled to Taiwan on a special invitation from Taiwan and the new president there. They invited myself, my wife, as an official invitation, and they invited a contingent as well, which I traveled with, which included the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Premier of Nevis, and leader of the opposition, something that is not done at all, but I wanted to show and demonstrate that St. Kitts and Nevis supports our good friend Taiwan. I also traveled with the Cabinet Secretary, Permanent Secretary in the Prime Minister's office, Dr. Frank Laws, Special Envoy for Healthcare, as we discussed healthcare matters, including the new hospital, and Director of the St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service. And so I would say that our visit was excellent. And again, to dispel all the nonsense about the country spending so much money on travels, this was a sponsored visit by the Republic of China, Taiwan. Sponsored mean that they covered the cost for the visit, and therefore this was at no cost to the country of St. Kitts and Nevis. The same when I traveled to Turkey as well, it was a sponsored visit. So I think that that information is critical, especially when we are facing with misinformation and fake news about how much this is costing us here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And I've been very transparent. This information can easily be had, and I normally give the information. It is just that some people want to be malicious and to spread false information. But I take this opportunity to dispel that source and the false information that they are spreading to you, people of St. Kitts and Nevis. So I met with President Lai. Of course, they received me with a grand military parade and the gun salute as well. Of course, he made statements. I made statements. He introduced his cabinet. I introduced my delegation. He spoke, and I spoke as well. And of course, expressing St. Kitts and Nevis' deep appreciation for an excellent relationship that we have had over the many, many years. We had a number of meetings following that. One of the things that we also discussed was the hospital and its funding, which we have seen more favorable moves with respect to helping us to get there. So our hospital is already on the way. Not that shovel is in the ground as yet, but what we are doing now, the actual joints, but the hospital will start in earnest this year. So it's already set up to start, and I want to thank Taiwan for their significant contribution to it. We also discussed the issue of IT and IT in medicine and in our healthcare system. And Taiwan has committed to helping us to get there very quickly. As you know, I want to really thank Cable for their hard work in helping us to connect all of our health institutions. Those are health centers and the hospitals with fiber optic technology so that we can even have telemedicine where a patient can be in Sandy Point and a doctor in JNF can see the patient and consult the patient with a nurse. We have that type of technology now, and we have the most advanced, I would say, right now in CARICOM. We have the most advanced. And because of that, we will be able to introduce the technology into it, which is the electronic medical health record system, so that we can be counted among those who are advancing with the inclusion of IT. I promised that we will do this, and we will have, I am certain, one of the most advanced systems in the CARICOM when it comes to health information system and the technology that goes with it. It is critically important because, as I've said, if there's one ministry that must continue to run, or institutions that must continue to run, it must be health. It is the most basic of all, and that is why we are investing heavily when it comes to modernizing our healthcare sector here. We visited the Overseas Investment and Development Corporation, OIDC, and China Engineering Consultants, CECI, and we discussed a number of things to do in St. Kitts and Nevis, especially to do with renewable energy development, especially in solar. So I discussed with Taiwan about developing a large solar facility here in St. Kitts and Nevis so that we can get to our green country, our sustainable island state, as quickly as possible. I also want to say that Taiwan is assisting us with getting our large desalination plant. I think we signed the contract this week based on what I was told by the AG, that it should have been signed last week rather. So I'm very certain that they're very close if they have not signed as yet. I'll get an update on that, hopefully before I'm finished today. That is going to produce 2 million gallons of potable water. Again, because of climate change, we are not having enough rainfall. Because we're not having enough rainfall, we are not storing enough water, and our aquifers are suffering tremendously. That is why we have to also include desalination when it comes to providing enough potable water for our people. I also want to say that when it comes to the CBI, that was one of the things I've told the country over and over, even before people recognize what are the challenges, that the CBI would be the most challenging thing for me as Prime Minister. I said that from the very beginning, for a number of reasons. I set out to change regulations with respect to our CBI program. It affected us to some extent, but part of what I also did was to ask the other countries to really let us get to a point of harmonization. And so we were able to sign an MOA, a Memorandum of Agreement, which came into effect the 1st of July, 2024. That, to me, is a tremendous, tremendous achievement. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the other prime ministers who adjusted their regulations, and we are now heading to harmonization. I also want to say that the central bank was part of that meeting, also the OECS authority, and we are setting up a regional regulatory body so that all of the questions around CBI will be dealt with once and for all. For well over a decade, I think there had been discussions about harmonization within the region, but we have now achieved it. And so, as a result, we are now able in earnest to relaunch our CBI program, which we intend to do July 10th to 14th in our, when we have our investment summit right here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And so I have seen the published regulations from the other 4 countries, and all of them are in compliance with the MOA. St. Kitts and Nevis, by today, tomorrow, we will make some adjustments to ours, even though we are in full compliance already, and we will be back fully on the market with new regulations. And we have set up the infrastructure such that we can protect ourselves from any perceived irregularities within the whole industry. And before year ends, we will have the regulatory body in place to oversee all the CBI programs of the region. And so I want to reassure our people that I had been working feverishly to make sure that the CBI program gets on a good footing, and I can say that it is in a much better place than it was before in terms of regulations and the safeguards that are necessary to create a safe, sustainable program to really be part of our economic outlay. Let me say, however, that it was a travesty to bring our economy to depend so heavily on the CBI program. It cannot be that a modern country that is moving forward would have an economy based about 60% on such a fragile industry. Critical industry, but it is fragile. And that is why we have to get to the sustainable island state based on renewable energy, food security, water security, circular economy, etc., so that we can be in the best position to continue to live in a sustainable way. One, dealing with the climate issues. Two, dealing with the economic issues. Three, dealing with the opportunity to build wealth, which is critically important. Building wealth is critically important. That is why this government has pushed for increase in wages and salaries. That is why we are pushing for the pension for our GAE workers. That is why we are pushing for social security reform. That is why we are pushing for the children's finance and education program, which will start in September. We are putting permanent, sustainable things in place to secure our people. No other country in the CARICOM or Caribbean has done what we have done. And I know, and that is not to say it in a boastful way, but that when people want to criticize St. Kitts and Nevis, criticize their own country based on false information, I want to put forward that we are not perfect, and we know that there are issues. We know that our people sometimes are in situations where they require some more assistance. We understand that clearly. And for our people, we will always work on their behalf. And we feel that when they feel it. In the post-COVID where there's inflation, we understand that. That is why we are subsidizing so heavily. We have the most subsidies in the CARICOM. We subsidize water, electricity, your tank of gas, as it is called colloquially. We subsidize even gas that went into vehicles for some time. We subsidize food. And we have also made sure that the cost for the basic cable did not go up. We are subsidizing to the tune of maybe well over $250 million. And our social safety net costing us 25% of the annual budget. There's no other country whose budget contributes 25% to the social safety net. These numbers are basically heard of in Europe, for example. But here in St. Kitts and Nevis, that is a reality. So we support our people significantly, even at those levels. And so I would like to say, of course, that does not mean that persons may not have challenges. And I acknowledge that. And I recognize that. And that is why we have to get to a sustainable island state. That is why we just cannot depend on the Citizenship by Investment program, which has gone through some challenges because of the regulatory framework that we sought to put in place here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Now we are taking that to the region. We need a diversified economy. And that is what we are basically working towards, making sure that our economy is diversified and it is resilient and it is sustainable. So you'll hear much more with respect to that as we go forward. But I would like to bring my opening statement to an end and give the media an opportunity to interact and let us have a meaningful discussion here at this round table today. So I think we can start the discussion. Right, I think we can start.
Yes, thank you, Prime Minister. At this point, we'll open the floor to members of the media. You pose 2 questions at a time, so we can have a time to get at least 2 rounds in before we close. And please remember to state your names and the media house that you represent. And I think we start with Ms. Matthew.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister Sherman Matthew, SKNIS. During your state visits, St. Kitts, Bastia City in St. Kitts and Kaohsiung City in Taiwan would have signed an agreement to become sister cities. Can you elaborate a bit on that agreement in terms of the benefits that are to be derived from such an agreement? And considering the unprecedented formation and intensity of Hurricane Beryl, which is the first named hurricane for the 2024 season, and the devastation it has brought thus far, do you foresee the Caribbean region seeking more international support to mitigate the disastrous effects of climate change?
Right. So let me answer the first one with Kaohsiung. Kaohsiung, you know, is a city in Taiwan in the southern area. It is a port city. It is a significant city in Taiwan. It is considered a large city by their standard. This city has done significant work in terms of trade, especially through port, in terms of technology. They are a significant part of the tapestry of the Taiwan's economy when it comes to its technological offerings. Culture, fishing. So many areas in Kaohsiung that are developed and that they're working on are similar to what we have here in Bastia. And that collaboration, where we'll be able to exchange best practices, be able to exchange resources, and I think that Bastia can benefit significantly from this relationship becoming a sister city with Kaohsiung. So there would be tangible benefits in terms of our development. And there will also be benefits from the human capacity development side. We already have students studying in Kaohsiung, and we can expand on that so that we can help to get our people build their capacity to get us to our sustainable island state. So I want to thank the local government, the mayor, and I want to thank the good people of Kaohsiung for really coming to the table and becoming a sister city with Bastia here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Now, the other one you asked is about how the Caribbean, Hurricane Beryl, and we asking for more assistance, correct? Yes, right. So the Caribbean, I look at the issue of the climate crisis from a perspective of climate justice. For me, it is not just asking for assistance as we will normally do when we need it. I think that there is an obligation on the part of those who create this issue to help those who are suffering, to mitigate, to adapt, and to be able to continue their development. It is critically important. That is the argument that I have brought to the UN since my first address in September of 2022. It is a matter of justice. And that will always be my argument. Why? The industrialized nation started to develop. They developed on sources of energy that came from coal and fossil fuel. Among other things, these are contributing significantly to the climate crisis. Whatever they emit goes up into the atmosphere, destroy the ozone layer, that leads to the increase in temperature on the earth. And with that increase in temperature, we are seeing everything when it comes to climate change, the insidious issues and the more acute issues. Here in the Caribbean, climate crisis represents an existential threat. What does that mean? Our very way of life can be totally wiped out, as we are now seeing in the Grenadines. This is serious. And it's not just about assistance, it's about giving us the necessary resources. St. Kitts and Nevis cannot afford it. We can't afford it. It costs billions of dollars for us to adapt, for us to be able to mitigate, and for us to be able to continue to develop. We can't afford it. We did not create the crisis, yet we are suffering significantly from it. You hear our people crying that they don't have water. That is because rainfall has dropped significantly. Mold, that is because of the shift in the climate. Mold is growing at a much faster rate. Heat injury. You go to the classrooms and so forth, you see the heat that was never there 20 years ago, 15 years ago. These things are having tremendous impact on our physical health, our mental well-being. Has the ability to affect our planting patterns when it comes to our farming industry. Destroying our coral, which means less fish and less tourists to be attracted to our beautiful underwater environment. The rising sea levels, right here. The president of the UN General Assembly, he's a Trinidadian, called a meeting at SIDS that I attended. And I brought the plight of Koi Hotel. If you go out there right now, Koi does not have a beach because of the rising sea levels, because the ice caps at the poles are melting, and as a result, the sea level is rising and taking over the beach, or the beaches here in the Caribbean. If you go out there, you see the sargassum, what we call seaweed, spoiling the beauty of our beaches, which is the attraction in our tourism industry. So we are affected on all levels when it comes to the issue of climate change. And we will be asking for more assistance, but not cap in hand, but to say that we need climate justice. Your actions have resulted in negative consequences, and therefore we are asking you, because you have benefited significantly, to help us to deal with it. That should be the message from the Caribbean, and not just from politicians. The media need to also demand justice. Write editorials. Connect with your people throughout the world who are in media as well, to say to them, the Caribbean deserves climate justice. That should be one of the mantra of the Media Association. How is the Media Association going to help to spread the Caribbean's message that we need climate justice? We can't afford it. This thing is weighing on me significantly because I know what is coming. I knew what was coming even before the people recognized what was coming. When I say we needed a smart hospital, some people laugh and say, you're always talking about smart. I'm talking about climate smart. You get hit by one of these category 5 and you'll be surprised how 80% of your houses severely affected with billions of dollars just for recovery. Set you back a decade or two. It's critically important. We need the assistance for mitigation, for adaptation, to help to protect us as far as possible from the climate change. But I will say this. It is disheartening when you hear countries still saying that they're going to increase their fossil fuel production, which means stronger hurricanes for us, which means the chances of survival are more challenging. When we see what come out of the Grenadines, and I say it, maybe this is the third time this morning, people will cry. When you hear Prime Minister say, I have not spoken to anybody on the island, we know that people are dead. We don't know how many are dead. We had to depend on Starlink connection to give us some idea of what is happening. These are serious, serious matters, critical matters. And I want our people to take it seriously. I've said to you, the people, that I will not lie to you. I knew what I was saying when I said we need to get to a sustainable island state as quickly as possible. We have to build that resilience, but we cannot afford it. Therefore, because we can't afford it, we have to ask for more assistance. But not only assistance in terms of what they can give, but they have to assist by cutting their emissions. Because if they don't cut their emissions, no matter what we do down here, it is not going to make a significant difference. The hurricanes are going to get stronger and more frequent to the point where you cannot build anything to totally resist them. It will make life near impossible on these islands. If you are going to be hit every year by a category 3 to 5 hurricane, how are you going to survive? It means that people are not going to insure any Caribbean country. Otherwise, or we will not be able to afford insurance. When the insurance companies look at the projections, the insurance companies are going to put their premium based on the risks. The higher the risk, the higher the premium. More money out of people's pocket. And if you can't insure, you can't attract businesses. You can't attract investments. This is how serious this matter is. Therefore, we have to ask for assistance in telling them we are demanding that you cut. We cannot go and say, please cut. We have to say, you have to cut. Because we are dying down here. Literally and figuratively. And therefore, I think, I know I'm impassioned about it, but it's because I know what is happening and what our people face. And I'm hoping that my passion will get across the message. So we'll ask for more assistance.
Good afternoon, Carla Berry, ZIZ Broadcasting Corporation. Prime Minister, you spoke about an emergency meeting you attended yesterday in terms of the national response. Can you give us an update on that in terms of the Federation's readiness with shelters, just our general state of readiness?
Right. Go ahead. Sorry. Yes.
Also, the Federation has pledged to assist countries affected by beryl. What would that assistance look like now that we are seeing some of the devastation and it's being seen and assessed? What tangible ways can we help?
Right. Thank you very much for those questions. Well, let me start with the first one. NEMA, as you know, has been meeting regularly. We even had a simulation exercise. Can you imagine people were out there spreading false information about the simulation exercise? I said to NEMA, based on what I know was coming, that we needed a simulation exercise. How can we go into a hurricane season where we expect stronger storms, more frequent storms, and we have not tested our systems to know how ready we are? The only way you can really know, 2 ways. 1, the real thing, or 2, pretend the real thing. And that is what we call the simulation exercise. We did it and we found some gaps. And I remember when the light went off at the hospital and police was blocking the road and all of these things. And then we said to the country within a half an hour that this was an exercise. Because we wanted it to be as real as possible. That is why we did not inform the country before. But the plan was a half an hour after, we will inform the country that this was a simulation. So I think we are taking this very seriously to the point where we ran a simulation without informing and said this is a simulation exercise. And I want to say that we are much more ready than we were even a year ago. We have the shelters. Cabinet 2 weeks ago approved the full budget that was asked for to get the shelters up to par. Full budget. Whatever they asked for, we gave them in full, 100%, because we wanted to make sure, or we want to make sure that the shelters are up to par. The second thing that we did is to identify other buildings that can be used for shelters. We have said that even if we have to use the schools, we will as a last resort, but they will have to be used if necessary as well. So we will spare no resource to make sure that our people are ready. And as I said in the meeting that I chaired yesterday, that once the emergency powers are brought into effect, whatever is needed, the government will get to make sure that we are on the best footing to deal with any of these disasters. So I can say that we are progressing well, and we will meet again. And we will run more simulation exercises because we are going to do a desktop. We're just not going to say when is it. I'm saying it, but you will only hear after it is done that it was that, because we want it to be as real as possible so that our people can have the best opportunity of survival. The other matter that you talk about with respect to the assistance, I had been in communication with the prime ministers. As you know, I was at White Sands. I left White Sands and I went home to call the different prime ministers. I spoke to Prime Minister Mia Mottley. I spoke to Prime Minister Dickon. I communicated with him, rather, we did communicate. I spoke to Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves, and then I communicated, Rowley and I, somewhere in the 4 morning of Monday morning. So I spoke to all four. I spoke to Prime Minister Pierre as well of St. Lucia. So I spoke to all the 5 prime ministers of the countries that were most likely going to be hit. And I said to them that St. Kitts and Nevis will do its part to help in the recovery. In our meeting yesterday, we discussed that. So we will put personnel, if they ask for linesmen, for example, to put back the electricity, we are willing to do that. So we will make persons available. And also, what do you need immediately after? They have asked, so far through SEDEMA, they have asked for water, Grenada for water, and I think tarpaulins for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We will also give other type of assistance, and those things are coming in. It is coordinated as to how it should be done through SEDEMA, and we have already started. So I can say right now, today, I spoke to the PS for National Security, I spoke to the chair for the disaster board, and I spoke to the national coordinator for NEMA, and they're already putting our assistance together to get down to the Windward Islands. Let me say, I took this so seriously that SEDEMA held its press conference right here in St. Kitts and Nevis. I think you might have been there, Bad. And this year, SEDEMA's conference is going to be held right here in St. Kitts and Nevis at the Marriott Hotel. That is how serious. When it came to fore, I said St. Kitts and Nevis will put up its hand to help to deal with the issue of the climate crisis in the Caribbean. And we said we'll host whatever SEDEMA wants to host, St. Kitts and Nevis will host them. And that is why they are being hosted. I also promoted that the subvention is the amount of money that each country gives to SEDEMA for its function. I promoted that that be increased. And we had an increase where each country pledged to increase, including St. Kitts and Nevis, the amount of money that it gives to SEDEMA so that SEDEMA can do its work. This is why regional cooperation is important. St. Kitts and Nevis cannot do this on its own. But when SEDEMA, which is a CARICOM institution where all of us come together and we set up this institution to deal with disasters in the region, it gives us the best opportunity to confront them. Can you imagine if St. Kitts and Nevis had to do it on its own? We would not come close to dealing with what is required to deal with the issues of disasters. So yes, we are working through SEDEMA, and we have already started to give the assistance. So right now I can tell you that St. Kitts and Nevis is in the process, and we basically planned before, And now that the call has been issued, St. Kitts and Nevis is moving full force to assist our fellow Caribbean brothers and sisters. And we can be assured that if we were to be hit, that we will receive the assistance from our Caribbean brothers and sisters, which we have received in the past, and the pledge is there also to receive it anytime in the future. So yes, Carla, we are definitely working on that presently.
All right, Prime Minister, it's a very challenging year ahead with regards to the potential for natural disasters.
Yes.
But I want to change the focus a bit and to put it on the CBI, which you mentioned in your earlier presentation. One of my questions is, did your government receive evidence from MSR that the Galaxy, the due diligence company used by Galaxy is owned by the vice president of Galaxy? That's my first question. And then secondly, based on the RICO case that we have had going around, National Bank faces serious issues for their dealings with Galaxy. We understand that the Bank of America has been subpoenaed. Is there a risk that the National Bank will lose its correspondence U.S. Bank?
Right. So let me say this to you, Mr. Bat, and not to you, but through you to those who are listening. Every Kittitian must always act in the best interest. Every Kittitian division must always act in the best interest of St. Kitts and Nevis. If National Bank were to lose its correspondence banking, who do you think will be affected? Every single, not even your business will survive. Your business will be dead. That is how serious this is. And that is why I'm taking it very seriously. If you attack our banking system in any way, you are attacking the very survival of our children, of our country. St. Kitts and Nevis will be downgraded within a week. It's a very serious matter. I want to send home that point. National Bank is a reputable institution. National Bank has a robust due diligence system. And I know National Bank has even enacted tougher regulations to make sure that National Bank is protected. To the point where National Bank was being seen as one of those banks that has done significant work to make sure it is protected. It will not only affect St. Kitts and Nevis, it would affect the region because National Bank is still the largest indigenous bank in the currency region. That is how serious this matter is. And I will not accept anybody who seeks to destroy the reputation of National Bank. It is beyond me. It is about the country. It's a very serious matter. And so I would say that National Bank has a robust system. With the changes of the regulations with the CBI program, we have introduced for the first time ever in any program in the Caribbean to make any issues of suspected underselling or whatever issues might not be complying with the law, criminal acts. So as I said before, we are not depending on anybody to determine how St. Kitts and Nevis should act. We have been proactive when it comes to that. Our action is to protect our program, to protect our banks, and to protect our country. And I will not entertain any sort of moves that would discredit our national bank. It is a very reputable bank. And so I would say, with respect to that, that we have strict laws, We are following our laws to make sure that we protect our program, which are the toughest laws in the region. And people are now just catching on to it. Since day one, I have been saying that this is very tough. This is very challenging. And I don't know if people were understanding exactly what I was saying. All these things that are being said and so forth, that was foreseen. I understood that. And that is why I said, let us rush to make sure that we put everything in place. So people can't come after and say, oh, I'm saying this and saying that. Well, I will maybe tell you, we have moved way ahead of that to the point now where we have harmonization in the region. That is what we have in the region, harmonization in the region presently. That is what we have. I will not speak specifically to any evidence of anything, or everything has to be verified according to our processes and our laws. And we are proactive when it comes to that. And we have made sure that we would do and continue to do and are doing to protect our program. So I will not speak specifically to any particular matter. As you know, there's a judicial review matter that is in the court that we will address. And so therefore you must understand that I would say what I would be allowed to say to make sure that I do not prejudice any proceedings. But let me say this, and I will say it again, that all of us have an obligation to protect St. Kitts and Nevis, and all of us have an obligation to protect the National Bank. That should not be up for discussion with nobody at all. Anything happens, not even your business, Mr. Bad, will survive. You too have an obligation, in my estimation, to protect the National Bank and to protect St. Kitts and Nevis. But I think that was your first question. You had another question? Yes. you answered both? Okay, Mr. Bad. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister Ebony
Yes.
Brandon, SKN Source. I would like to shift away from everything and move to Peter Verdi, who we may have forgotten.
Right.
Peter Verdi became the subject of international discussion when High Court documents, in the course of an investigation that was taking place between the Germans and British authorities, some transcripts were revealed in which some very interesting comments were made by Mr. Verdi and his business partner, Derek Turchler, I believe his last name was. In these, an Antiguan MP who is now no longer a part of the Brown cabinet was named, as was former Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris. And the allegation at the time made by, and it's just an allegation, made by Mr. Verdi was that he had difficulty engaging with the former Prime Minister and members of his cabinet because they would ask for, quote unquote, shoes and watches, and they would want to go for big, expensive dinners. There were a number of allegations made which were not becoming of a head of a country. Needless to say, that got pushed to the back burner because this happened around 2018. But on the 23rd of May this year, kind of flew under the radar that he has actually now been charged for bribing a Caribbean official, and that Caribbean official is the person who lost their job in the Brown cabinet, MP Assad Michael, because he's still an MP. He's named, and now it seems there is some veracity behind allegations of bribery involving Verdi and this former the former cabinet minister. What does that say to you? Although nothing so far has been said about the former prime minister, are you concerned that St. Kitts and Nevis might be faced with further scandal as this other matter continues to unfold?
Right. Yeah, that's one. Yes.
The other question I have is with respect to the recent concessions which your government announced. There were a number of things mentioned in respect of back to school, vehicle concessions closer to the end of the year. And I think what stuck out to everybody was the fact that you said that air conditioning units were going to be given some concessions as well. Timely because of the heat. However, we're back to the electricity because we don't yet have geothermal, which bumps us down to 17 cents per kilowatt hour. We're still up in the 60s. When everybody is able to get an air conditioning unit, how do we pay for it? And I'm especially asking that question because I don't expect that further subsidies can be given to anyone, but are you considering perhaps households that have small children and elderly people? What are we doing to keep their electricity bills under control?
Thank you very much. I'll touch on the last one again. What you touch on there in the last question is adaptation. That comes under the big heading of adaptation, adapting to the increased temperature. You mentioned two critical things. Already the country has to forego revenues by giving concessions so that people can get cooling units. A significant revenue loss by the government. And then the second matter is, which you are correct, people will use more energy, and most of that energy is subsidized, which again put a big burden on the government. And of course, the consumer will have some increase in the electricity bill, but we continue to subsidize. So this is the part, another part of the climate crisis, the adaptation part. Because the temperature has gone up, people need cooling units, which means expense for a unit and expense for electricity. And that's an economic burden, a significant economic burden that we can't afford. We really can't afford it. When you add all of the things that we need for adaptation, no country in the Caribbean can afford it. We will go bankrupt. And people will be demanding more and more. I can't say that the people are wrong to demand more and more, because if you're hot and miserable, you want to be cool and comfortable. Can you imagine you're in a house and you're hot and you're sweating all night? Who would not want a cooling unit? And so I understand that the people need this. And we are doing our part at the expense again of revenues to subsidize it through, one, the concessions, and two, the subsidy on the electricity, so that people can have a more comfortable life. But again, it's a part, it will cost tens of millions of dollars that we don't have. And that money could have been used for something else. Had we not have climate change as a result of the industrial countries producing all these gases that are destroying the Earth, atmosphere, rising the temperature and so forth, that money could have been used to build more houses, could have been used to create more industry, more jobs, could have been used for so many other things, for infrastructure, better roads, and all those type of things that we're asking for as a country. So at the same time, we have to spend on adaptation. People are still asking for there to be development. So how do you pay for adaptation, mitigation, and development all at the same time? We can't afford it. Just looking at the AC situation is going to cost us millions of dollars that we don't have. Already, that is putting a hole in our pocket and cutting out resources that could have been put to development, which means development to some extent has to suffer. And if development has to suffer, it means we're not adapting fast enough to the climate change. So it's a vicious cycle the Caribbean going through. Money for adaptation, less money for development, less money for mitigation. A vicious cycle until you run out of money. That is why your question about more assistance is critical. No country in the Caribbean can afford it, not one. And if they say it, they are lying to the people. But they can't. The Grenadines, they can't build back the Grenadines. Somebody will have to come in and give them. They're not going to give them enough money to build back the Grenadines. People are going to permanently leave these areas and go away. For example, Barbuda was hit significantly. Build back. If in this climate change, Barbuda is hit again, you think those people are going to say, Lord, man, I just get hit. I build back my house, I get hit again. man, let me just pack up my bag and go. This ain't make no sense anymore. That is why I'm saying this is an existential threat. People will become so frustrated that they just say, let me pack up my bag and go, I can't take on this. And these countries don't have enough money to adapt to what is happening. So I got a green card, I go in America, believe. That is what we are facing here in the Caribbean. And so the question that you really ask is a question of adaptation of these AC units and the electricity to do them. That is why we need a sustainable island state. That is why we are rushing to geothermal and solar energy to cut the energy costs so that we can pay for the adaptation. But nobody can come from anywhere and save us, but we can't do it without them. We need them because they have to cut their emissions. If they don't cut their emissions, we will not be able to survive as a region. The region will be destroyed by hurricanes and significant adverse weather effects. Heat. It become impossible to live almost. Because again, we have to find the energy to power all of these cooling units. If you go to the Middle East, they have oil, so they have the oil to power the AC, the cooling units. And then they don't have hurricanes, but we're going to have heat, hurricane, lack of water, and where is the money going to come from to deal with all of those? That is why we have to get to the sustainable island state. We get low-cost energy, it puts us in an opportunity to have more resources to spend on infrastructural development, stronger infrastructure, and to make sure everybody can be cool, have those cooling units at low cost. That is why we are rushing towards geothermal and solar energy, because it is just too expensive. But each time you talk about one of them, is the same story. Right? Does it come back to the same thing? Now, the Verdi matter is a serious matter. I had been speaking about this for a long time. Remember, this transcript came from a reputable institution, which is the British court. The British court, they had the information based on tapping of a phone, tapping Verdi's phone and getting the conversation between Mr. Verdi and Dr. Harris. And in that, from the British, they had in that transcript where he was asking for watch and shoes, expensive dinners, and after parties. This is in the transcript of the British court. I am not making up this. This is a serious matter. And that is a pattern that we saw of the corruption, deep corruption, that you are caught on tape by British authorities begging for watch and shoes. If you were begging for 3 houses, 5 houses, 10 houses, 20 houses, for the people, the people would have said, man, he begging for us. But if you go beg for shoes and watch and after party and big dinners, well, a dinner in a banquet for the whole country. The whole country can't wear the watch. So it means, therefore, that was for personal gain. And then Verdi said, remember, you're going to need me for the campaign money. So it was all personal gain and not gains for the country. Because we have to ask for what we want. But we should ask for the country. And it's a very serious matter, and we should not forget it. And Verdi case is now coming up. And those things are going to surface again. Just like the issue that we had with the whaling with the same person in question. Just like what we have with the prison project, 5,500 citizenships. And when he was asked, the former prime minister, how many citizenships? He said it's an industry secret. Well, how the people's citizenship can be an industry secret? Hid it from the people. When we did our analysis, committed the country has committed me. When somebody becomes a citizen, they have all the rights therein in the Constitution. Therein in the Constitution. All the rights. That is why the people needed to know what is it you are doing. And that is why I keep saying that the CBI program is a very challenging one, because I saw where it was going to go in terms of the banking that you spoke about. Even though National Bank is a very reputable organization, nobody should be able to call National Bank in question. That is why they would not pass or put into effect integrity in public life. That is why they would not do that. Because of these shenanigans, if you had integrity in public life, transparency and freedom of information, you couldn't say that hiding the number of citizenships from the people of St. Kitts and Nevis is an industry secret. It is a patrimony of the people. You don't own it. It belongs to the people. And then, in that same thing, more questions were asked. It was said that it's not the people's money is not being used to build the prison. And how you could say that? If the people's citizenship is being offered, how can you say it does not belong to the people? It belongs to the people. That was a travesty. And that is why we are in the situation that we are in with questions around the CBI. This must be laid at his feet. And I spoke about this even before the elections. And others spoke about it. And he hid it, and he hid it, and he hid it. But the government changed, and the facts are coming out at this particular time. And I will go further to say that members of his family have businesses in the CBI program that have made millions of dollars. Nicola Capital, in his next press conference, asked him who is Nicola Capital, who owns Nicola Capital, and how much millions they have made. Because they used to direct investors to Nicola Capital. Corruption. And that is why I say, well, he doesn't just be quiet and move on and give the country a chance to breathe. Because there's so much to uncover. Nicola Capital. Millions of dollars as a result. And so it is all part and parcel of the corrupt infrastructure that the last administration had established, led by the immediate former Prime Minister, Dr. Timothy Harris. I want the media to find out who is Nicola Capital, who owns it, it is registered, and how much millions they made from the CBI program. That is a question to be asked, and the people deserve the answer on that one. Each time he talks, I'm going to reveal more and more. Each time he talks. I have a lot more. Give the country a chance to breathe. You are the total opposite of what is integrity in public life, transparency, and so forth, because you refuse to put the regulation and the law in place. All right, any other questions?
Prime Minister, can you give us an update? But currently there are a number of capital projects on the way. Is it possible for us to get an update on those projects? And in a recent hearing of In Focus, the Director of Public Works, George Gilbert, would have mentioned that the department is looking to add new engineers to its staff. With those capital projects continuing to be rolled out across St. Kitts and Nevis, can you discuss the efforts being made to upgrade the engineering capabilities at Public Works Department to ensure that projects adhere to new sustainability standards?
Yes, thank you very much. That's a very good question. As you know, the people in St. Kitts and Nevis have been asking about the capital projects. Recently, I took to my own Facebook page and I started to just post all the projects that are taking place. I'm not even talking about those that have been completed. Just to dispel the notion and the misinformation that there are no capital projects. And I went through a series of them. The MRI building, when I put it up, I think it had over 300 plus likes. People were shocked. The MRI building is really taking place. Yes, we'll have our MRI here. No more need unless you choose to go to the biomedical center, AKA Monkey Farm. I said we will put an end to it. So we are building a special housing for it. The MRI is being built at the same time as the building so that the MRI does not have to go into storage. It will be a very, very modern piece of equipment that will serve our people here. And I dare say, I know people will come from other parts of the region to use the MRI because at any point, an MRI in the next country can go down and they probably will need to come here just as we might have to go to other countries. I also put there the stadium being built in Connery. For many years, Connery was promised a football stadium, and I was able to demonstrate that it's taking place. Another thing I was able to demonstrate is how many houses NHC is building. NHC is building presently over 20-something homes. And that is even before the full rollout of our smart home program, which in earnest is going to kick off very much this week. I was able to show the Social Security program of building homes. Presently, they have about 6 to 7 large buildings under construction. I was able to show the St. Peter's Main Road. That is a multi-million-dollar investment program. I was able to show the new traffic 3-story building being built to house the traffic department and move from the small room that we have at the St. Johnson area. I just said, let me just start to post them. And people were really like, I also post the desalination site from Canada, where we are doing with the UAE desalination, but it's going to be fueled by solar energy. So I just put in them and people are asking, this is really going on in St. Kitts? And I'm saying, yes, this is really going on in St. Kitts. But there was some misinformation out there that no capital projects taking place. And our major capital, which our housing, and I spoke to the financial institution that is funding that, and they have confirmed to me that it is fully funded. And you know, we went to Parliament to complete part of it, which we have done. And so the hospital, I spoke about that as well, which is a $60 million investment. The new desal plant, which is a $30-something million, well, a $60 million US investment. The new desal plant is a $13 million US investment to make sure that we have water. The Bastia High School, the renderings was shown. The plans are now being drawn up in their detail. So we have, and the geothermal, which I'll give some details on my next roundtable or press conference or my next media presentation. So we have a lot of things on the go and rolling out presently. So I really wanted to dispel the whole misinformation that nothing is happening. The other one, and that's only some, that's not even all. Because the Joshua Abidaya School, you know, is going to be on stream, and I think George Gilbert would have spoken about that as well. Now, we realize we have a human resource shortage at Public Works, and so the minister brought it to the cabinet, and we really sanctioned that we bring engineers from Cuba. So there's a cadre of engineers that will be coming from Cuba very, very soon. When I say very soon, which in a week or two, that's soon. And they will help us to really get out these capital projects much faster. They'll help us to streamline a lot of the processes of building maintenance, getting projects going, building up our resilience when it comes to infrastructure and so forth. So we are getting that cadre of engineers from Cuba to really help us to push forward with our infrastructure plans and ideas and vision. So yes, all those are taking place. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I see you love CBI.
Well, I've been on it and be on the CPI issue for over, you know.
Okay.
Now, with regards to
So you was not in the farmer administration,
we did ask,
but you were getting the answers. Oh, well, you got a lot from me already.
now, with regards to a report that surfaced yesterday, we are now aware that the Attorney General is about to be named as an
I'm not aware of that.
in regards to, and just for clarity, because you're accused.
Let me ask you, where are you getting, because you're asking this, where are you getting this information? From a what? From a reliable source. Okay, because when you say you're asking me a question because you're getting from a reliable source, I want to know the authenticity of your source as well.
There is also another matter. You have accused the People's Administration of allowing the underselling of our citizenship through the jail project. When you came into office...
Right, so let me clarify. I have never said that I have never said that, Mr. Bad. I've never said I accuse them of underselling. I accuse them of hiding the information of the number of citizenships. I can accuse them of maybe lowering the legal price, but I've never said anything about underselling being done. That is very critical. I am the Prime Minister, and I have to make it clear. This Prime Minister has never said that. I know what that question is, and I know the implications of that question, and so I have to make it clear. Not this Prime Minister. I have never said that. I have said that we have put a continued due diligence process in place, and I have made underselling a criminal act, and we will do what we have to do. And anybody we found who would have broken the law, after meaningful investigation and going through the process, we will do it. You have to have the laws in place to make sure that you can deal with these matters. We have criminalized it. So I have never said that.
So just to be clear now, when you got into office, did you, under your administration, did any applications or processes of applications being made on the jail project that were under the legal price?
Let me say, that has to be done through investigation, if you are thinking that. That is why we put the law in place. When it comes to me, you cannot just automatically think that it's below the legal price, because there's something called the government fees, which come directly to the government. If there's suspicion of it, that is why we are putting in place even stronger investigative infrastructure in terms of putting someone who will investigate any issues of that. So that is where we are at, and that is what we will do. Okay? All right.
No.
And when you ask the question about the Attorney General, I'm asking about authentic information. That is what I, as the Prime Minister, have to respond. That is why, what is your source? Is it authentic? It is real? That is what I have to, that is what I have to respond to, in a sense. Okay?
And so since we're on CBI, I am
Yes.
going to ask a CBI-related question,
Yes.
and it's whether or not, based on what you said earlier, we've gotten to the point where we need to start making a distinction in law between the types of citizens there are to provide us with some sort of protections as we look to strengthening regulations with respect to the CBI. And then the other question that I would have wanted to ask, and I know you said you'll elaborate in another meeting, but I'll ask it anyways, whether or not as we look at the energy issue and we move towards geothermal and making life easier really just for citizens, if we're ever going to look at, or your administration will ever look at a buyback tariff system where persons who are contributing to the grid can also get something back out of that if perhaps you have solar panels on your house. And I'm specifically speaking to solar in this instance.
Right. So we are setting up, that's a very good question. We have a system, we had a meeting here that was sponsored by the British government in terms of putting regulation in place so that these regulatory, what I would call suite of laws that are to come, these are to help us to deal with exactly that, to have the feed-in tariff. One of the things is, if you put the solar panels on the houses, let everybody send the electricity to the power station, and then they buy it back. So they sell it more than they buy it for. They will make a profit. That is one of the things that can be considered. Instead of you using and what left over, go. So that it can be set up, all go. Whatever you use, you buy it at a cheaper cost than you did, so you'll actually make some money from it. That is what we are looking at. So that is going to be critical. Why? Because solar energy, to have the panels, it takes a lot of land. A lot of land is needed. And if we don't have enough land, St. Kitts is only 68 square miles. Nevis is 30-something square miles, 100 square miles of land. And if you're going to use acres upon acres just for solar panels, that land could have been used for agriculture, housing, or for something else, with respect to. Now, the CBI program in terms of citizens, our Constitution does not have a distinction between citizens. You're either a citizen or you're not a citizen. And every citizen, and that is a very critical question. That was one of the first questions I asked the Attorney General. The question I asked the Attorney General was exactly that. How would this affect us? Because there are over 50,000 plus citizens to the Citizenship by Investment program. I cannot continue that in that way. Mr. Barrett, I cannot continue that. It can't. It's unsustainable. And he has a lot of issues around it. And so therefore, I'm simply saying that we have to get to a sustainable path of a diversified economy. And that is why we want to get to the sustainable island state. So that these questions about CBI and CBI and CBI, I want them gone. We need a country that have a very regulated CBI program from a regional level and a diversified economy that is premised on a lot of things. Because in the CBI space, people are looking to see how they can gain. That is why I said this is going to be the most challenging thing that I deal with. Sometimes the country is not the best interest of people. It is their personal interest. Because they can pack the bag and go. You and I can't pack our bag and go, Mr. Bat. Well, I could speak for me. I ain't going to order citizenship. I can't pack no bag. Okay. And that is why I want a program that is transparent and nobody can call it into question, and to get all of the perceived shenanigans out of it. Not just for us, but for the region. Nobody should be fighting over our citizenship. We should be in total control of that. That is what I'm simply saying with respect to that. And nobody is going to take that away, I think, from any leader of this country. That is where it really should reside. Or the people elect the leader to address those particular matters. All right? So my greatest interest is St. Kitts and Nevis. There are others whose interest is self-interest. And I will do everything that I have to do to make sure St. Kitts and Nevis is on the best footing. That is why I think good governance is critically important.
Mr. Prime Minister, St. Kitts and Nevis has been subscribed to the 25 by 25 agenda. 2025 is just a few months away. How sure are we that we will achieve those goals in that time? Right. And for my final question, can we just get some feedback from you on the music festival that just passed?
Right. Good. So on the 25 by 25 agenda, that had been something that the Minister of Agriculture had been promoting, of course, with my support and the support of the cabinet. Let me tell you a number of things we dealt with. We bought new tractors. So we have brand new tractors to make sure that we can have the land prep necessary We also started a drought-resistant program, again, adaptation to climate change. Millions of dollars being spent just to adapt to climate change with the increased temperature. And so what we actually have presently is a drought program that includes drip lines and seeds and matting for the ground and all of these things. These things are critically important. And as a result of that, we had seen an increase in agricultural output. Not only that, we invested in the fishing industry, and the minister announced that last year alone, $15 million was made in that industry. So we saw an increase. We are about to engage on a fisheries, and we are going to put that down in the Deep Bay area. That is a fishing town, so to speak, a fishing community. So that is it. That is very, very important. So we also invested in those tanks for water. We invested in training more of our farmers. And not only that, we are embarking on some very large programs. For example, the planting of 400,000 trees of plantain and banana. That is going to start very soon. So we want to deliver that to almost every house in St. Kitts and Nevis. So, Carla, you should have a banana tree and a plantain tree, producing fruit and producing, and then we're going to create farms with bananas and plantain. We now have on the way 13,000 plants of coconut, again, to replant coconuts here in St. Kitts and Nevis. So in a sense, we have done a lot of work establishing Bayfords again. Southern University is coming very soon, in this month, actually, to help us to build out Bayfords. That will be a center of excellence for livestock. So we have done a number of critical things that we think would get us there or close to there. And I think the minister has the numbers. And St. Kitts and Nevis has been identified as one of the countries that is on its way. We have taken this very seriously, and we have made the necessary investments with respect to it. With respect to the music festival, as you know, that the music festival was started in the 90s. It's a very long-standing music festival that keeps getting better. Last iteration of the music festival was very, very successful. All 3 nights were attended. They had great attendance. The people came out in their numbers. As one person told me, you look like you have more people in the VIP than you have in the regular. And I know that, in the VIP, you have to pay a substantial amount to be there. But I think everybody had an opportunity to be at the St. Kitts Music Festival. I myself participated all nights of the music festival. I came back from Taiwan the Thursday, and I was able to participate the very Thursday night. And I did have an excellent time during the music festival. So I want to take this opportunity to congratulate the minister and her team for an excellent presentation of the music festival this year. I also want to add that White Sands at Carambola was very successful as well. I went there as well. That is when I left prematurely to speak to the other prime ministers who are going to be affected by burial. And it was just full. I mean, it was amazing to see how many persons were there. So I think overall the weekend went without incidents. It was well enjoyed by our people here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And I want to once again congratulate the minister on a wonderful, wonderful music festival, and to thank the people of St. Kitts and Nevis for making sure that it was a safe music festival. And as a matter of fact, I think St. Kitts and Nevis's name is now further along in the international community as a place where you can go to have fun and a place where you can venture deeper. So I think at the end of the day, it was a very, very successful. Let me say also, to the extent even the hotels. I spoke to a sample of the hoteliers, I think Park Hyatt, Marriott, Koi, and they all told me that their numbers went up as a result. But generally, their numbers have been higher this year. And that has to do with the increased number of flights that we have had regionally and internationally. So we have seen a significant increase in our tourism sector. We have seen increase in our agriculture sector. And we want to see an increase as well in our energy sector as far as renewable energy is concerned. So basically, it is to build out our country. And then the other matter is, with respect to the CBI, we are getting ready to relaunch it on between July 10th and 14th, because we have made the necessary changes. We have harmonized in the region, something I was fighting for. And so the changes that I made affected the CBI program to some extent because we had the higher prices and so forth, but I was willing to do that to help to drive us to harmonization. And so I think we have reached that, and now we are ready to relaunch again. As you know, the only country in the Caribbean, only one to share its wealth with respect to a dividend with its people based on what is available in the resources is St. Kitts and Nevis. Why did I choose to do that? Because here you had a CBI program that was the people's citizenship being used. So I said, if there is any extra that is available, let's give the people directly. That is where the independence reset comes from, plus the other 2 dividends that were paid. So any extra at any given point, I would seek to see how I can get it to the people. So at the particular point where the program was affected, we cut back for harmonization and there's no extra, then we might have to forego that until we get back there. But the key to this government is to create a sustainable island state so that we can have higher wages, we can have pensions, we can have the student or the children's financial and education program to end poverty once and for all. Those are the things that we are striving for, to create jobs in the green industry that mean geothermal and solar energy. Let me add something here. St. Kitts and Nevis now has the largest technical course for solar panel training in the Caribbean. And we have the first cohort, the trainers of trainers, they have just completed. We are now going to start our electrical vehicle mechanic training. The vehicles are supposed to come in, I spoke to Dr. Archibald, within a couple of weeks. And then we are going to get mechanics, and we're going to train those mechanics at the CFBC of how to take care of electric vehicles. Our electric vehicles, that is what the world is switching to, and St. Kitts and Nevis is to be ahead. So you see, all these plans and programs, they work in unison so that at the same time we are transitioning, we are preparing our people technically to take the jobs that are necessary to be had. So in a sense, it is all part of a whole, but the whole must function well. It is not that one sector is isolated from the other. There are no silos, all working one with the other. Because if we take down the cost of energy, everybody benefits. Personally, industry, jobs, everything, social programs and so forth, people really benefit significantly. So it is all in an effort to develop a sustainable island state which brings everything together so that we have the best opportunity for proper living here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Drew. And thank you also to the media houses for taking the time out of your schedule to come and engage with the Prime Minister. I know it's always a pleasurable time for both you, the media houses, and the Prime Minister to be able to share and discuss matters of national interest. At this point, we are about to wrap up, but I'll allow for the Prime Minister to give his closing remarks before we close off for today.
Right, so let me close off by saying simply that this government and administration will continue to work on the behalf of you, the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. We are aware that things are not perfect and will not be perfect. We hear you. But please know also that this government administration is humble enough to always seek solutions to make your life better. That is why we have the highest minimum wage in the whole region. That is why we have the best pension plan in the region. That is why we have Social Security reform to make it sustainable and strong for going into the future. 25% of our budget is built on the social safety net, or goes towards the social safety net. That means elevate, that means lift, that means step, that means the children medical fund and all the other, the uniform program, the funeral assistance program, the subsidies for electricity, gas, water, food. We are spending the largest part of our budget on these things throughout the region. The stats speak for themselves. Look at the numbers and you will clearly see. And we have shared the wealth from the CBI with our people. Whenever the opportunity presents itself, I will share it with the people. But it's a dividend, meaning that is the extra that is left after you would have fulfilled your full budget and any other thing that you can give directly to people. What we had to use funding for, we had to save the development bank. Just 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had to put $10 million in the development bank so that it can carry out its student loan program, so that it can be able to pay back Social Security. 10% of Social Security is owned by the development bank in terms of loans, or is loaned to the development bank. Let me put it that way. If development bank is not able to pay back, Social Security will be in serious trouble. That's to the tune of over $100 million. I could not stand by and allow development bank to fail because of the bad management by the previous minister and his brother. And if development bank fails, Social Security would be put at great risk. So I had to ask myself a serious question. Where do I put that money? Had to put it in Social Security, indirectly through the development bank. So the development bank is now doing its student loan program, which had been stopped for a while because there was no money. And it is now able to pay back the Social Security, at least some of the money that it owes. And we hope that development bank can continue to stabilize to be able to pay back more to Social Security. Critically important. That, to me, is one of the most critical important decisions that had to be made. We are paying a lot for adaptation by subsidizing so heavily so that the cost to the people at the end of the day will not be so much. And I know that post-COVID, people are having challenges, but no other country, and I dare say no other country, has given so much to its people to ease the burden. And I stand on that with facts. And we'll continue to do what we have to do in order to make sure that our people can live the best lives they can live. I want to say to our people, we need you. We have to work together to build out a sustainable island state. If we don't do it, our existence in the Caribbean is going to be a terrible one. Climate change is upon us. The temperature is expected to go above 2 degrees Celsius. The aim was 1.5, which is bad enough. But because we have not responded enough as human beings, it can go to above 2 degrees to about 2.2 degrees. That means stronger hurricanes, longer hurricane seasons. It means that St. Kitts and Nevis, along with other Caribbean countries, will be in very difficult situations. We have to now spend our money on adaptation, meaning money for water, money for electricity. We had to rent generators so that we can produce enough energy around this time. And that had nothing to do with the natural development that people expect. We will never have enough money for it. And there, going forward, no country will have enough money for it. It is going to be a tough, tough decade for us to deal with. And that is why, at this time, all of us have to work together to bring about a sustainable island state. I want to thank you for joining me at this roundtable and to make sure that you get the information that you need. But we must always act to protect St. Kitts and Nevis. So I want to thank all of you for joining me this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Much for tuning in. This was the Roundtable with Prime Minister Honorable Dr. Terrance Drew and members of the media. I am Adelcia Conifer-Lance. I want to thank you for listening and be sure to stay tuned for our next episode next month. Thank you.